The National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union is expected to brief the media in Braamfontein, Johannesburg. This is about the ongoing public sector strike following the collapse of wage negotiations. Workers have been blocking access to health facilities countrywide over the past 5 days. This is despite an interdict. They are demanding a 10% wage increase. SABC News reporter Katlego Legodi is on standby to give us an update. Katlego, good morning. So it's been a very hectic week for healthcare workers and patients. Does the strike continue tomorrow?
A very good morning to you, Mkolisi, and to our viewers at home. Today marking exactly the 7th day since the demonstrations kicked off, where Nehawu members did good on what they promised last year going into this year to say that they're going to take to the streets. This against that unilateral implementation of the 3% by government announced last year that has already kicked in. The workers are not happy, Mkolisi, and we saw on Monday very early, embarking on this demonstration amid that court interdict that was brought on by the employer. This is because that court interdict, Mkolisi, was challenged by the union Nehawu. They brought in an appeal that gave them the more or less the leeway to still continue with their demonstrations while the legality or the legal part of this process gets underway. The workers, of course, are very angry at government right now, to a point whereby, Mkolisi, we saw them early in the year deciding to abandon that process, the fresh round of talks for the year, the bargaining council to say that there's no need. It's disingenuous for them to be embarking on a fresh round of talks when there are still outstanding issues emanating from last year. The elephant in the room being issues of wages, this being the 3% that was implemented. The workers are calling for 10%, Mkolisi, and they're saying that 10% should kick in because government is capable of just, more or less giving them what they've been calling for. This is Union Nehawu, forming part of the public sector workers and public sector unions under COSATU and under SAFTU, alongside the South African Policing Union. Most of them, they've promised and threatened that they'll be embarking on rolling demonstrations nationwide against that unilateral implementation of the 3%. They're saying that the cost of living policy is too high, and as we speak right now, the negotiations with the employer have not been going well. So this coming at a point whereby we have a new Minister of Public Service and Administration, Katlego Legodi, who walks in straight into this impasse that exists between the employer and the workers, those frictions, threatening also the 2024 elections, where the workers often, when they demonstrate, they would say that they're threatening that at the polls, they'll show government what they are made of. So today, Mkolisi, we're expecting to get an update from Nehawu in terms of really where we are right now with those demonstrations. That question that you posed to me right now as to whether that demonstration will be continuing into the second week, it remains to be seen. So at around 12 o'clock, we'll be having the office bearers of Nehawu taken to the podium to just let us in on whether they are continuing with these demonstrations or not. And remember, Mkolisi, on Friday, this particular matter was in the courts at the Labour Appeals Court, and the judgment there was reserved for Monday. So tomorrow, we're expecting to just get a judgment whether this strike can continue in its legality or it's interdicted, something that was brought on by the employer, blocking the processes and the demonstrations. This coming through at a point whereby we've also seen the Gauteng provincial government bring about their own interdict, this time around from the health department or the section of the government in Gauteng, to say that the demonstrations have turned ugly and they want the police to ensure that the services are not disrupted as they have been disrupted, and that facilities are not distracted, and that they're calling for the police to ensure that those that are in need of healthcare services are allowed to go in and out of these facilities without any intimidation. So we'll be hearing from the Nehawu office bearers. They've been consulting. We're hearing with their legal teams as well in terms of where to from here, looking at one, the interdict from the Gauteng Health Department in terms of protecting the facilities. Two, the interdict that was brought on by the employer in trying to block this process altogether. But the workers are saying that really the elephant in the room remains the issues of wages, and at this point in time, we'll also hear from them if they will be going back to the bargaining council to embark on the fresh round of talks, or at this point point in time, the impasse will exist and we'll see them going into the second week of striking action. Policy?
So you just spoke about the disruptions. I was actually going there. I want us to zoom in on those disruptions there. We saw that some of these disruptions actually crippled certain parts of the health sector throughout the course of the week. What does Nehawu make of these disruptions, Katlego?
Well, this disruptions coming at a point whereby the workers are saying that they've been sending a message to the employer. If you can remember last year, they've been rolling demonstrations since last year. There've been pickets as well since last year in terms of just showing the employer that we want the wages and for you to just come back to the bargaining table and negotiate with us in good light. So the employer already at this point in time has been served with several memorandums from these men and women that are demonstrating here. So they're saying that at this point in time, they've been left with no choice but to take it to the streets in a point that their demonstration is going to be felt. So really at this point in time, we've seen those services disrupted, just attributed to the stubbornness of the employer, to say that if the employer had negotiated with them in good faith, and if the employer was more or less forthcoming in terms of negotiating with them before implementing that 3%, maybe we wouldn't be where we are today. So whatever destruction and everything that has been happening in terms of these demonstrations and the services that have been disrupted over time, it's been attributed to the employer, to say that the employer then needs to come back to the negotiating table. We have a new minister right now and negotiate with these men and women in good faith in a way that maybe we'll see this destruction of property halted once and for all. But it remains to be seen, really. At this point in time, it looks like the workers are really frustrated and they've been pushed to this point in time because really it's not the first time that they're demonstrating or withdrawing their services. They've been on a soft kind of demonstration, and this time around saying that the impact needs to be felt. And it seems like they've managed to really ensure that the impact is felt, looking at some of these meetings that have been had last week already, and we saw the Minister of Health also coming out here in Gauteng to say that at this point in time they need COSATU to ensure that the workers that are falling under the federation are really, really controlled in terms of how these demonstrations are going, to a point of that interdict that was introduced or implemented by the Gauteng provincial government in terms of ensuring that at least that impact is minimized in policy.
So amongst that 10% increase that they're demanding, what more do they want? Because we understand there was also talk about their working conditions. What more can you tell us on this?
Well, the workers were looking really at the budget speech by the finance minister just to lay it out. They've been against the issue of austerity measures that they say have been more or less ongoing every year, year in, year out. The budgets that are meant for apex, government departments like your police, like your nurses, that those budgets have been cut over time. They're talking about the manpower, the men and women on the ground, that they've been working under strained conditions over time. So they want those conditions to really be attended to. They're also talking about the allowances. They're talking about the UIF. They're talking about bonuses. Some of these things really were affected when government reneged on the implementation of an agreement that was signed for in 2018 already. So they're saying that at this point in time, they want some of those things to kick in. And government has not been forthcoming. Instead, I think last year, we even had of a point whereby the ministry was saying that what they are negotiating with these workers amounts or leads to about 9%, something that was slammed by the workers, to say that government is also trying to send mixed messages in a way that the workers are not on the same page with the employer. So that 3% they want it done away with, and they want the benefits. This benefits backdating to 2018 when an agreement was signed, and this is an agreement that we even saw government going to the Constitutional Court to ensure that they don't actually keep up to their end here. So they're saying that government has really been disingenuous, but government was also frank. When we saw what was coming out of the budget speech, Minister Enoch Godongwana saying there that there's no money at this point in time. They don't have money. They've not budgeted for 10%, what the workers are calling for, but the workers saying that this is not a fresh matter. Government knew over time that we'll find ourselves where we are right now. They've also cited issues of corruption that they say have been rampant in some of the state-owned entities and government departments, saying that some of those monies could have went to help these men and women that are working under strained conditions over time. So it remains to be seen if government will come to the party under the new minister, not Katlego Legodi, or this time we'll see this impasse continuing into the second part of the year, as we've already heard Mxolisi right now that other unions are threatening to join in where these demonstrations are concerned. So we have Pop Crew, for instance, that's a policing union that is saying that in the coming week they'll also be withdrawing their labors, they'll be joining in. So you can imagine that as some of these unions, public sector unions, some of them falling under the essential worker category, as they come through, services are bound to be disrupted here. So if government doesn't come through, we can say that it's coming to address Nehawu, but Nehawu is not the only union that is demonstrating right now. We have Pop Crew, we have SAPU, we have Denosa, and other unions that also fall under the essential worker category that have also threatened that in the coming week we'll see them withdrawing their labor here.
All right, Katlego Legodi is our reporter on the pulse of that story. Let's touch base with you a bit later on as and when developments become available.